The trash bags were still cold from the night air. I stood in the hallway outside my own apartment, still in the hospital bracelet, still in the gown they had sent me home in, and my incision pulled every time I breathed. The locks were different. I knew they were different because my key went in and stopped. I had been a labor and delivery nurse at Providence, Portland for 11 years. I knew what a body looked like after a C-section. I had held hands through 47 of them and whispered, "You're doing so well," to women I would never see again. I did not know what it felt like to stand in a hallway at 6 in the morning, leaking through a hospital pad, counting trash bags with my own handwriting on the labels. There were 9 of them. My brother Conrad had written my name on every single one in black marker. Not Tessa's stuff. Just Tessa. Like luggage. Like something being returned. I still don't know what I did first. Touch the bags or try the key again. I tried the key again. I have a habit I've never told anyone about. Every morning since my divorce, I check my phone before I even open my eyes. Not because I'm expecting anything, just because the silence feels less heavy if I'm already holding something. I did it that morning too, standing in that hallway, one hand on a key that no longer worked. Welcome back to Her Secret Diary. Tonight's story is about coming home to something that should have been impossible, and discovering that the person who built the trap had been building it for years. If this is your first time here, would you stay just 2 seconds and hit subscribe? Not for the numbers, so the next woman who needs this story can find it. And before we go any further, where are you listening from tonight? Conrad was 4 years older than me, and had always been the one our mother called responsible. He paid his bills early, kept a planner, and when our parents died 3 years ago within 7 months of each other, he handled the estate, the accounts, the property, the calls to the attorney. I let him do all of it because I was the one crying at the kitchen table while he made lists, and that was how we had always divided things. He managed. I felt. It had worked for 36 years, or I thought it had. He was also the co-signer on my lease. His idea 2 years ago, when my credit was still rebuilding after the divorce. "It's just paperwork," he said. "It doesn't mean anything." On the door, tucked behind the new lock hardware, was a folded piece of paper. I didn't open it yet. I just stood there looking at it. My neighbor, Dot Kerrigan, was 71 years old and watered her plants at 6 every morning without fail. I heard her door open before I heard her voice. And when she saw me, saw the bags, she didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "Honey, how long have you been standing there?" I told her I had just gotten home from the hospital. She asked what happened. I told her I'd had a baby. The silence after that had a shape. The lease renewal was due in 48 hours. Raymond, the building manager, needed a signed response and the first month's renewed rate of $4,200 by end of business Wednesday, or the unit would be listed. I had known about the deadline for 2 weeks. I had the check ready. I unfolded the paper from behind the lock and read the first 4 lines, and then I read the 5th line again. It said my daughter was not safe with me. It said he had documentation. It said he had already made a call. And at the bottom, underlined twice in the same black marker he had used on my bags, was the name of a family court judge. I read the note 4 times, standing in that hallway, then folded it exactly in half and put it in the pocket of my hospital gown, the same pocket where I had been keeping my phone since 6 that morning. Dot didn't ask what it said. She just opened her door wider and said, "Come inside." I sat at her kitchen table while she made tea. I didn't drink. The trash bags were still in the hallway. I could see them through the gap in her door, 9 black shapes with my name on them in Conrad's handwriting. I kept thinking about the marker he always carried, a thick black Sharpie clipped to the inside of his jacket pocket, the one he used to label everything. Boxes in the garage, bins in the pantry, folders in the filing cabinet he kept in the spare room. He was a man who believed things should be clearly marked. Apparently that included me. Dot sat down across from me and was quiet for a moment. Then she told me Conrad had come by 4 days ago, before I had even gone into labor, and had spoken to the building manager for almost 30 minutes. 4 days ago I was still at work. 4 days ago I thought my brother was in Seattle for a conference. I called the building manager, Raymond, from Dot's kitchen. He sounded uncomfortable the moment he heard my voice, and told me my brother had said I was being hospitalized long-term, and had asked Conrad to handle the unit while I was away. I told Raymond that was not true. He said Conrad had provided a signed letter with my signature. I had never signed any letter. I thanked Raymond and ended the call, and for a moment I felt something close to relief. A forged signature was something I could prove, something concrete, something a nurse who had spent 11 years documenting everything in triplicate knew exactly how to handle. Then Dot said, he had a woman with him. I looked up. When he came to speak to Raymond, there was a woman waiting in the hall with a folder. I didn't recognize her. Not Felicity, his wife. Dot knew Felicity. A woman with a folder. The lease renewal was now 46 hours away, and Raymond had confirmed the landlord needed a decision by end of business Wednesday, $4,200, and my signature, or the unit would be listed. I asked Dot if I could use her laptop. I searched Conrad's name alongside the family court judge written at the bottom of his note, and I didn't expect to find anything. I found a LinkedIn connection, mutual, professional, a nonprofit board they had both served on 3 years ago, the same year our parents died. I sat back and thought, he planned this before I was even pregnant. This is about the estate. It was always about the estate. Conrad managed everything, and I let him, because I was the one crying at the kitchen table. That made sense to me. Grief made people do things. I almost forgave him right there, sitting at Dot's kitchen table with cold tea in front of me. Then I opened the email from our parents' attorney that I had flagged 14 months ago and never fully read. The one I had told myself I would get to when I felt stronger. The subject line said, Secondary Beneficiary Designation, Amendment Filed. I opened it and read it slowly, twice, to make sure I was understanding correctly. The amendment had removed me, not from part of the estate, from all of it, every line, every asset. Every account listed in the original filing that my father had set up when Conrad and I were still in school. The filing date was the same week I told Conrad I was pregnant. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in Dot's spare room on a bed, with a quilt that smelled like cedar and old lavender, and I read the attorney's email 3 more times before I set my phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling until the room went gray with morning. Dot made oatmeal I didn't eat. I called Providence at 7 to check on my daughter, and the nurse told me she'd had a good night. Gaining weight, responsive, doing well. I thanked her and cried in the bathroom with the tap running so Dot wouldn't hear. At 9:15, Conrad's wife Felicity called. Felicity had never been unkind to me. That was the thing about her. She was warm in a way that never quite reached anything real. She asked how I was feeling and said she had heard I'd had a difficult delivery. I said I was fine. Conrad's been so worried, she said. We both have. This whole situation has just been so hard on everyone. I asked her which situation she meant, and there was a pause. Not long, just enough. You know how he gets, she said carefully. He just wants what's best, for the baby and for you. He doesn't always show it the right way, but his heart is in the right place, Tessa. I told her I appreciated her calling, and I did not tell her what I had found in the attorney's email. After I hung up, I went back to the laptop and searched Gerald Marsh, our parents' estate attorney, alongside Conrad's name. They appeared together in a community foundation newsletter from 4 years ago, board members of the same nonprofit, and when I searched further, I found the family court judge listed there too. 3 men, 1 circle, built before any of this started. I thought, Conrad didn't build this when I got pregnant. He walked into something that was already constructed and waiting. That almost made me feel better, the idea that it was opportunism rather than intention. Almost. Then I remembered the amendment filing date was the same week I told him about the baby, and I understood that it didn't matter which came first. He had used what was available, and he had been ready. I asked Dot if I could look through her storage closet. She kept boxes from old tenants, things left behind during moves, and she said, of course. 3rd shelf, brown boxes. I don't know what I was looking for when I started. I found a letter in a manila envelope tucked behind a broken picture frame. The return address: our parents' house on Dunmore Street. The postmark: 26 years old. It was addressed to someone named Ruth Ellison, and our mother's name was Patricia. I had no aunt named Ruth, no cousin named Ruth. Had never in 36 years heard that name spoken in our family. The letter was short. 3 paragraphs from an attorney confirming a property transfer was complete, and that Ruth's share had been formally redirected per the agreement, with 30 days to vacate. I thought, a neighbor, a family friend, someone my parents helped once. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. This was old paperwork from people I didn't know. Nothing to do with me. Then I found the response letter tucked behind it, the one Ruth had sent back. The handwriting was my mother's. My mother had signed her name as Ruth Ellison. I sat down on the closet floor and stayed there for a while. My mother had a name I never knew, an identity before my father, a share of something that had been redirected, taken, before Conrad and I were ever born. Conrad knew. That was the only explanation for why he had handled the estate alone, why he had never let me near the paperwork, why the Sharpie was always clipped inside his jacket. The careful man who believed everything should be clearly marked, except the things that mattered most. I pulled out the note he had left on my door and read the 5th line again, slowly this time. It didn't say my daughter wasn't safe with me. It said my daughter wasn't his niece. I slept 3 hours and woke up before Dot's radio came on. I lay still for a moment looking at the ceiling, and then I made a decision. I was done looking for what happened, because I already knew what happened, and what I needed now was to understand what came next. I called Gerald Marsh's office at 8:45. His receptionist said he was unavailable, so I left my name and said I was Patricia Ellison's daughter and that I had questions about a Ruth Ellison amendment filed 26 years ago. I kept my voice level and did not explain anything further. He called back in 11 minutes. He said he couldn't discuss client matters. I told him I wasn't asking about a client. I was asking about my mother's legal identity, which appeared in documents she had signed using a name her own children never knew existed. There was a pause longer than Felicity's had been. "Where did you find that letter?" he asked, and I told him it didn't matter where I found it. What mattered, I said, was the nonprofit board, the 3 of them, Marsh and Conrad and the family court judge, appearing together in the same newsletter 3 years ago, the same year our parents died. He said that was a coincidence. I told him I was a labor and delivery nurse, and that I understood the difference between a coincidence and a pattern. He said he would need to consult with his colleague, and I said I would give him until noon. After I hung up, I sat at Dot's kitchen table and looked at the 9 black trash bags still stacked in the hallway through the gap in her door. Conrad's handwriting on every single one. Just my name, no return address, like something being shipped back to wherever it came from. I thought about the Sharpie clipped inside his jacket, the careful man who labeled everything, and I understood for the first time that he had been labeling me my entire life. The one who cried, the one who felt, the one who let him handle it because she wasn't strong enough to manage. He had been so completely certain of that. Felicity called at 10:12. "I just wanted to check in," she said, her voice warm in that way that never reached anything real. "Conrad mentioned the lease renewal is tomorrow, and he's worried about you managing all of that alone right now. He said if you need him to step in and handle the paperwork, just to make it easier, he's happy to do that." I let the silence sit for a moment and then said, "That's generous." She said, "He just wants to help. He always has." I asked her how long she had known Gerald Marsh, and she said the name didn't sound familiar. Said it without a half-second of searching. Said it like she had been waiting for exactly that question and had the answer already prepared and ready. I thanked her for calling and went into the hallway and opened the 3rd trash bag. Not to unpack, just to look. Conrad had packed the way he did everything, methodically and completely. Kitchen items together, bathroom items together, my daughter's things in a separate bag I had not been able to open yet. At the bottom Wrapped in a dish towel the way I always kept it was the letter, not Conrad's note from the door, but the other one, the one my mother had sent me 3 weeks before she died. I had read it at the time and understood it as grief. An old woman missing her life, saying things that didn't quite connect. I read it again now, standing in the hallway in the same spot where I had stood in my hospital gown 40 hours earlier. She had written, "There are things Conrad was told that you were not. I want you to know I did not choose that, and I want you to know Ruth always intended for it to go to both." I had thought Ruth was a neighbor. I had thought it was something sentimental. A piece of furniture, a piece of jewelry, something small. I pulled up the estate documents Conrad had emailed me 18 months ago, the ones I had filed away unread because I trusted him, and turned to page 11, Asset Inventory, third line from the bottom. A property listing I didn't recognize, with 2 names on the original deed, Conrad's and mine. Gerald Marsh called back at 11:58 and said he needed to inform me that he had a conflict of interest and could no longer represent the estate. He said it in the careful language of a man who understood that the alternative was considerably worse, and then he gave me the name of an independent probate attorney in Portland named Patricia Osei. I didn't tell him I had already called her that morning at 9. Patricia Osei had asked me to email the amendment filing, the property deed, my mother's letter, and the Ruth Ellison correspondence. I sent everything from Dot's kitchen table, while Dot watered her plants and didn't ask questions. Patricia called Conrad's attorney that afternoon, and I was not on that call and did not need to be. By 4 o'clock, Conrad's attorney had contacted Raymond, the building manager, to confirm that the lease co-signature had been improperly leveraged, and that I retained full tenancy rights. Raymond slid a new key under Dot's door without knocking. I held it for a long time before I used it. The lease renewal was signed at 4:45. My name only, witnessed by Dot, filed electronically by Patricia Osei's office before end of business. The $4,200 came from an account I hadn't known existed. My share of the property my mother had listed under both our names, frozen that morning while I was still on my second cup of coffee. I went home. The hallway smelled exactly like it always had, and I carried the trash bags back inside one at a time. Not all of them were worth unpacking. Some things I had been storing out of habit rather than love, and I left 2 bags by the door without guilt. I unpacked my daughter's bag last. A knit hospital hat, 3 onesies, and a card one of the nurses had slipped inside when I was discharged. "You did something hard. Be proud of yourself." I put the card on the kitchen windowsill, in the light. I thought about the 9 bags with my name on them in black marker. Conrad's Sharpie, always clipped inside his jacket, the careful man who believed things should be clearly marked. He had marked me correctly, as it turned out, just not the way he intended. I was Patricia Ellison's daughter. I was Ruth's too, in every way that mattered. I was a woman who had stood in a hospital gown in a cold hallway and read a note designed to end her, and had then gone inside and made phone calls. My daughter came home on a Thursday. She was 5 pounds 11 ounces, and she made a sound when I lifted her that I will carry for the rest of my life. I put her in the room I had prepared before any of this started. Yellow curtains, soft morning light, a small white dresser with nothing on top of it yet. I didn't hear from Conrad. I don't know if I will. Some distances settle into place without a closing door, or a final word, and he is somewhere in the city, and we share a mother's name, and a father's face, and a house on Dunmore Street that is being handled now by people who are not him. I have decided that has to be enough. I have decided I am allowed to decide that. I made tea this morning the way my mother taught me, bag in first, water just off the boil, 2 minutes exactly. I had been making it wrong for years without knowing. This morning I remembered the right way, and I sat down at the table instead of standing at the counter, and I drank it while it was still warm. My daughter was asleep in the next room. The card from the nurse was still on the windowsill, and late morning light moved across it slow and unhurried, the way light moves when you have finally stopped watching the clock. I don't know what makes a family hold and what makes it fracture. I've been thinking about that since the hallway. I think it has something to do with what people choose to keep secret and what they finally choose to say out loud. I chose to say it. If your own family crossed a line they could never uncross, would you have done what I did? Or would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace? Tell me honestly in the comments, because I read every single one. And if this story stayed with you, please like it, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Her Secret Diary for more unspoken family truths.